Welcome to Shifting Gears, the show that catapults you back into the driver's seat of your life. Buckle up and prepare to check your mirrors as you shift from autopilot to the exhilarating journey of alignment with your host, Dana S. Diaz, the Power Shifter. Get ready to rev your engines and accelerate towards your true potential.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Shifting Gears with me, Dana S. Diaz, your host and also the Power Shifter, because I want everybody to know the power within themselves to change their life. And where does that start? It starts in your mind. And our guest on our last show, Christine Peine, is a subconscious mind expert. So we're going to dive a little deeper today into some of the points that she made, because what a lot of people don't realize is that it's your subconscious beliefs, those core beliefs about yourself, who you are, what your place and purpose are in this world, that dictate up to 95% of your daily actions, decisions, and behaviors. 95%. They are things that usually happened when you were very young, before you even became aware, as often our identities are shaped by the time we are 7 years old. That's only second or third grade. So we have to really be honest with ourselves about what our core beliefs are in order to change them or update them. I always say we're sort of like phones and computers. We do need updates once in a while, because what we may have believed about ourselves may not even be true, but we're still operating based on those core beliefs. So this episode is going to be for anybody, particularly any woman who is done repeating those cycles, who is done living in fear or shame or doubt and uncertainty, because we all have those things within us that we want for ourselves. There's always something we want to improve, or that we know we want better, that we know that we want our lives to be different in some way or another. Even if you are happy and fulfilled, there is always something more that we desire for ourselves. And this is how we tap into it, by trying to figure out first what the core subconscious beliefs are that are hindering us from achieving that. And I think one of the most relevant points that our guest, Christine Peine, made was that we can have all the success, we can be accomplished, we can even have the desire and the wish and pray and do all the things, the affirmations, all the stuff, but we will still, because of our core subconscious beliefs, sabotage or avoid or just decline pursuits that would propel us to where we want to be. So this is really the first point, and that we need to take with ourselves, is knowing what is hindering you. What are the core beliefs you have about yourself that are driving your life? Now, for me, if you've heard any of my talks or anything I've shared, one of the main things that drove me for the first 4 decades of my life was overhearing the reference to me as a mistake and an accident in reference to my conception and birth, and believing for my whole life that I was an accident and a mistake. It gave me low self-worth. It made me believe that I didn't deserve things that I really was worthy of. And it takes a lot of undoing to rewire that subconscious programming, but we all have that. So this might, in your mind, be that little voice in the back of your head that says, I'm not good enough, or people like you don't do that, or you shouldn't do that. Share in the comments, if you feel comfortable, what that belief is. I've also heard from women even older than me that say, oh, I'm too old for this, or it's too late for that. And we carry these beliefs in us. And again, it makes us avoid opportunities that would fulfill us and make us happy. It prevents us from pursuing joys and passions. And as our guest, Christine Peine, had pointed out, it can even block our receiving of income and wealth and abundance and all these things that we actually do deserve, but something inside us is telling us that we don't. So the first thing is get down to the core belief, know what that is. And you might have multiple of them, especially if, like me, you grew up in maybe abusive or adverse circumstances where you were not only hearing those words referenced to you, but you were hearing things around you. It comes from culture, it comes from your family, it comes from authority figures, from the media, from society in general dictating who you are supposed to be based on your gender or your race or whatever it is. So whatever those blocks are, those beliefs, you have to figure out what they are in order to move past them. That's the first thing. But I want to be very clear in this, that although this requires radical honesty with yourself, you have to really be honest with yourself about this. You also have to give yourself the same amount of grace. Nobody is perfect. There is no shame or judgment in who we are or what we believe about ourselves, nor how we came to believe those things. It is just a fact of life that we operate based on our subconscious beliefs. Therefore, we do need to know exactly what they are and just take it for what it is and figure out then how to move past them so that you can live the life that you truly want to live, because every one of us deserves to have that. So knowing your limiting beliefs is the first step. What then do we do to change them? Well, again, you have to be radically honest, because awareness is going to be the first step in healing, in changing, and improving. In anything you do, you have to be self-aware. And again, this involves not just accepting the things about you that are great and worthy and wonderful and support what you want and the vision you have for yourself and your life, but also being honest about, yeah, you know what, I'm not so great at this, but not reverting back to that judgment of oneself. Even just yesterday, in a situation, I was having a conversation and somebody said, "Oh, I'm so stupid. I don't know anything about that kind of stuff." And I said, "No, you're learning. You're not aware of how to do it because maybe you never, were taught how." That is a difference. You are not inherently stupid. So we do have to be careful, even the words we speak about ourselves, the words we think about ourselves, because again, going back to that subconscious, your subconscious operates based on the words you think and the words you speak. We talk about words and thoughts carrying energy, and that is what we're talking about. And I know I might have some people in the audience saying, "Oh, that's not true, that perhaps it doesn't matter what you say and think because what you do is really what's going to enact the result of it all." But no, the words you think and speak really do. You are creating your reality. That's why they call it spelling. Just like a witch casts spells, you are casting spells with your words. So you don't want to diminish yourself. You don't want to repeat all the things that other people have told you, which I would actually argue most of the things that ran through my brain on that endless replay loop, and they were on a tape because I grew up in the 80s. Remember those tapes with the 2 holes and you put them in a tape player? Yes, that's how old I am. But in the endless loop on replay in my head were all the things that were told to me and that I heard about me in the environment that I was growing up in. And then the way I was treated was evidence to support that. So of course, that's how your brain develops these core subconscious beliefs about who you are. So we need to know what they are, be self-aware, and that self-awareness expands into when we are in those moments where we say, "Oh, I'm so stupid, I should have known better." We have to stop ourselves and say, "Okay, I'm aware that I do this. Now what?" Well, the now what is doing something different, right? One of my favorite cliches, and I do love my cliches, is if you always do what you've always done, you always get what you've always gotten. And if you're here, it's because you want to change. And part of that is changing your mindset. Because if you change your mind, you will change what you do, you will make better decisions, and you go forward and you'll have different results. So again, You stop yourself in that moment when that thing is coming out of your mouth, or maybe you're thinking it. I have been known to, in my house, my husband always says he doesn't know if I'm talking to myself or somebody else or one of the cats, because I will actually stop myself and say, no, we are not doing that. And then I will actually correct myself and reaffirm, whatever it is I need to correct. So once you become self-aware of that subconscious belief that you're thinking or speaking, I do encourage you to just stop and say, okay, we're not doing this. We're going to reframe this. Again, the I'm so stupid, I should have known better can be reframed as in, I wasn't taught that, or maybe I didn't understand it completely when I was taught that. So I'm still learning, but I'm capable of learning that. And you know what? Sometimes you don't want to learn something, and that's fine too. I have said that to people. I'm capable of learning that, and I can if I really wanted to, but maybe I just don't want to. And that's a lovely thing about self-awareness as well, is just being able to discern what is truly going to make you happy. Do I really want to know this? No, not necessarily. So somebody else maybe can do that for me, and I can do other things and improve those. And one of the other things I want to point out is that when you do have these moments where you are thinking or believing that thing that really just is not supportive or productive towards, anything in your life, you want to ask yourself, when did I first hear this? Or when did I first feel this? When was this first present in my life? Now, are you going to get an accurate answer? No, maybe not. Maybe you'll have a memory of, in third grade, Billy called you stupid because you didn't know something. I don't know what it is. Maybe it was something before that happened. But whatever that first recollection you have, that's usually the one that's sort of imprinted on your heart and in your mind that really just solidified that belief. Because one of the things we have to remember about subconscious beliefs are that your brain believes things, and I've said this a million times, and it's part of my signature talk, they may not be true. There's something called the illusory truth that is that your brain, and this is just how your brain operates, there's a lot of statistical evidence about this, but your brain only has to hear something, whether it's thoughts or words, or if you see it, if you read it or hear it somewhere, your brain only has to see it or be exposed to it 2 to 7 times for it to begin to develop and solidify as a truth, as a core subconscious belief. So maybe Billy in third grade telling you that you're stupid wasn't the first time, but if that's what your mind is recalling when you're trying to figure out when was the first time I felt this way, when was the first time I really was impacted by that thing that person said, or that I felt that in that moment, that's the point that it rooted into your system. So again, going back to my personal story, hearing myself referred to as a mistake and an accident, it was over several times, but I do remember the specific time that I heard it, that it just rooted into my system. It just decided that's what we are, that's who we are. And I always liken this to those labels that you get at events that say my name is, and then you have to write your name. And I feel like we go through life and we get all of these my name is labels. My name is, it might be bipolar, autistic, mistake, accident, not enough, all these things people say that you hear enough and you hear repeatedly that you begin to believe. Just like, I won't get into politics, but just like the media knows what the illusory truth is. Religions know what the illusory truth is. Cults, toxic family systems, they all operate on this because they understand that the way to control other people and to control the decisions and actions people make are by causing them to believe a specific thing. You can only control what you believe, though. And I hope that we have a lot of independent thinking women out there that want to empower themselves with their own truths, because it is your truth. What you decide is going to be the truth that is going to be the basis of what you live by. So going back to What do you see for yourself in your life? Even if you don't know what that answer is clearly now, you do know that it's something more. You know that it's something a little different, a little better. Something has to change, whether that's with your health, whether it's with your finances, maybe it's in your professional life, maybe it's in your personal life. But there's that thing, or maybe multiple of things that you really truly want to see some change in. And again, that's why they call me the power shifter, because I am telling you the power is within you and it's within your subconscious mind. So do this first. Ask yourself what your core subconscious beliefs are. What are those replay loops going through your mind, and where did they first originate? And there you will find the core of it and can begin to rewire. And again, why do we want to do this? It's because all of these things that we saw and that we were exposed to growing up and then throughout our lives, they're going to dictate how we feel about ourselves. And how we feel about ourselves dictates everything you do, every action, every inaction, every reaction. This is in your personal life and your professional life. So some of you might be here and you're immediately going to personal situations, whether it be relationships with family or relationships with a partner, or maybe you don't have a relationship and you're wondering what's wrong with me that, I'm at this age and I don't have a partner and I'm not married. Well, again, I would say stop shooting on yourself. We say that term very nicely, but it just has to go back to what your beliefs are about what your life is even supposed to look like. Even outside of what do I believe about myself, what do I believe my life is supposed to be? Because there is no one size fits all to life. I know that we all get caught up in that, and especially in generational circumstances. I'm a Gen Xer, but I know, my mother and grandmother, the baby boomers, have this idea, boy, if you were married by 20 and pregnant and starting to have babies, you were an old maid, as they say. And there was some pressure in my generation. I've talked to other women who have felt the same, that, there was this pressure that if you go to a wedding or you go to some event and they see that you don't have a date, or you're bringing somebody that, you just started dating, well, how come you're not married? And there's this implication something is wrong with you. And God forbid you're married and you're not having children. Then people want to know why you're not having children, which delves into very private matters that not everybody needs to know. So we really do need to understand what those subconscious narratives are, not just about ourselves, but about what we expect our life to be. Because at the end of the day, I am here to tell you, and I'm giving you permission to live the life you want to live, because you are the only one who needs to be happy in your life. There is no point in living a life that is dictated to you, or living the life that you should live, because we all, and I guarantee you, at least one woman who is living a life right now that she's not happy in. She's going through the motions. She's taking care of everyone else like she's supposed to. She's doing all the things, being everything to everybody. And at the end of the day, there's nothing left for her. And I think we all at some point, especially as women, find ourselves in those situations, but it doesn't have to be that way. It's okay to say, I get to live my life too. I get to make a choice that's good for me and that makes me happy. And that's unfortunately one of the subconscious blocks a lot of us have, is that we're made to feel selfish for that. And we glorify women that sacrifice themselves for the sake of the family or for the sake of the community and everyone else. But I would say we need to stop glorifying that and tell that woman, maybe that's you, that it's okay to take a nap. It's okay to say no to bringing the cupcakes to your son's first grade class tomorrow. Or it's okay to give yourself permission not to bake the cupcakes and to go and buy them at the store, as long as there's no peanuts or whatever other allergens. But you understand what I'm saying. You have to give yourself permission. You have to give yourself permission to be happy and to live a fulfilled life, because that's why we're here. And you only get one opportunity to do that. Every breath you take is that opportunity. And every breath you take and don't take that opportunity is unfortunately going to be a missed opportunity, and we don't want you to have that. So, going back to these subconscious narratives, they do dictate your confidence, your boundaries, your relationships, and one of the focuses on our last guest, Christine Peine's work, is our finances. One of the most interesting things that I found that she discussed was the relation of our subconscious beliefs to income. In fact, the reason I had asked Christine to be a guest on the show was because I heard her on somebody else's show, and she was talking exactly about this. And I had a revelation while I was listening to her. She was talking about how when we're growing up, we, of course, we're absorbing everything in our environment, not just the words, but everything we see, everything we hear, everything we're exposed to, we absorb as information, all that data, and our mind interprets it. And basically it serves as a guide to how to live our lives. And when she talks about here I am, I just turned 50, and maybe you're in your 40s, 30s, whatever. But when we look at our parents as baby boomers and their parents, my grandma, or I should say, I'm sorry, my great grandma lived through the Depression. And she is actually the one I lived with for the first few years of my life. And I remember we would eat a lot of rice. We're Puerto Rican, so we would eat a lot of rice. And if there was even one grain of rice left in that bowl, oh my goodness. If I asked for more food and I didn't eat it all, oh my goodness. And I love my great grandma dearly. I am not, smearing her name here, but it was the mentality that we're looking at, that mentality from the Depression of you don't waste one grain of rice. You are fortunate to have that last bite of food, and you better gosh darn eat that last piece of food. But that scarcity mindset from the Depression, that carried down to my grandma. And my grandma was one of those women that back when women were supposed to stay home and just take care of the children in the house, once the children were gone to school, she got herself a job. She put on her nice dress, went and interviewed, and got herself a job. And it was always work, work, work. And then you get to my mother, and my mother was the up at 3 a.m., work, 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 never had time for me, couldn't cook for me, couldn't go to any of my dance recitals, none of my things, just couldn't be bothered. I let myself in the house after school. I fed myself the whole thing. Not trying to give a sob story, but just an example. My mother worked, and then she went to bed late at night. And then she woke up in the morning, 3 a.m. all over again. And we lived well. We lived well eventually, I should say. It was hard times at first, didn't have much. But when we were living well, she still continued to do this 3 a.m. to the time she dropped at the end of the day and just couldn't do it anymore. And I saw her exhaust herself, and I saw her just continually push herself. And again, I'm talking about this self-sacrifice, but this idea, that mindset that gotta work, gotta. And like Christine put it so well, it's what's developed this hustle culture that we live in, that, if we want more money, if we want the bigger house, if we want a house at all, if we want food, if we want to buy nice things, if we want to have a car, if we want, we have to work. And yes, I am a hard worker. I've worked hard my whole life. But what Christine talks about is the mentality of how do we get from the hustle culture of gotta work. Otherwise, we don't have those bowls of rice, and we're scared that if we don't eat that last grain of rice, we may not have any more rice tomorrow, to knowing what we deserve and trusting that we will have what we need and that our basic needs will be met. And I'm going to intervene here with just one little detail, which is very significant as I talk about this. We have to remember that even though we live in modern times, our brains are very primitive. Our brains are living back in the caveman days when you had to go out and hunt for your food and hope you didn't get eaten by a lion. And I know this sounds very dramatic, but I am telling you, this is neuroscience. So our brains operating from this primal perspective, all your brain cares about is that you are fed, that your life is sustained, that you have protection, whether that be in shelter or in the belonging and acceptance into the larger groups, whether they be family, community, and so forth. But it's all for self-sustenance and basic survival. But anybody who has lived in adversity or abusive circumstances, or, even in third world countries, we still see this even in modern times. Survival is not where success and abundance and all the things that, even just inner peace thrive. Those things do not exist when you're living in survival. But you have to remember that our brains are wired for survival. Because as I say in my signature talk, your brain does not care if you're happy. It doesn't care what you are capable of. It doesn't care what you want and what you can achieve. It cares about you surviving, breathing, being fed, and being protected from harm. So that is where all of this comes from. So when we talk about the scarcity mindset, this fear that here's this food and we may not have food tomorrow because we need to go work and work harder and work more, and there's not enough money in the account and we got to work harder so we get more money and do the thing. It's exhausting just talking about it. I have to take a deep breath just talking about it. So imagine those of you that are out there doing it, because I was one of those people. But in one of my last interviews with Ramonda Jan, who is the CEO of Women Thrive, we were discussing the Women Thrive Summit coming up and what my talk is about, which is you become what you believe. And I was sharing some of this, that, we do have to go back to our subconscious minds and this idea of working harder. Because when I look back on my life in my first marriage, I had a degree in journalism. I had studied psychology. I had actually started at DePaul University in the pre-law program thinking I was going to become a lawyer because I wanted to save children from abusive circumstances and do more work in that area. But when I got married to my first husband in a narcissistic situation, narcissism 101, they isolate you. They don't want you to have joy or achievement or, any happiness or fulfillment outside of them. So what did he want me to do? He wanted me to clean houses with his best friend's wife. So I did it, thinking I was being a good wife, thinking I was going to keep the peace. It's fine. He had moved us so far out of the city and away from all the opportunities that would benefit me in the area of journalism or broadcasting anyway. So I did it, but I was only cleaning 2 to 3 houses a week. And I thought that's all I was worth because, again, coming out of an abusive household, thinking my whole life that I was an accident and a mistake, I didn't think I was worthy of more. I just thought whatever I was given, that's what I had to deal with. And I did. And I thought that made me a good person, to be self-sacrificial. But here's what happened. There's still those embers burning inside of Dana's heart that I was like, okay, I'm cleaning 2 to 3 houses a week. Well, if this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to give it my all. And I was professional and I provided exceptional service and I was trustworthy and I was reliable. My character, my true authentic character came out in my work. So without even knowing it, those 2 to 3 houses I was cleaning a week became 2 to 3 houses a day. And then before I knew it, it was 10 to 12 houses a day, sometimes more than that. Within just a few years, I had to hire a crew of 8 women. I was in the 6-figure range from just 2 to 3 houses a week. And that is when I started realizing my value, realizing my worth, and realizing what I was capable of. And once that idea about myself, that self-perception shifted from I'm a mistake to, wow, I'm actually pretty worthy and capable of so much more, everything changed. First thing that changed was I realized I didn't have to stay in that miserable marriage that I was in. Nobody was happy, and it certainly wasn't a service to my son to stay there. So I was able to leave that marriage and make a better life for us. And because I had financial independence, I had options. But I want you to understand what I'm saying is that I wasn't working from a scarcity mindset. I was just doing my duty at my job, showing my true character, providing good service. Even if I only had one client, if two of them canceled in a week and I only had that one house, that house was going to be spotless and I would go above and beyond. And granted, I was a people pleaser back then, but now I please myself. But that is because I learned my value. But in doing that, in showing my true self and who I truly am, and just being who I truly am, look at everything that opened to me. Because when our mindset shifts, when our self-perception shifts into one that limits us, into one that expands us into all of these different possibilities, then everything expands, right? Because obviously in that situation, I went from having very low self-esteem to suddenly having so much confidence in what I did. I went from being financially dependent to being financially independent and having more options in life. Everything just changes. And again, it's just that mindset shift to know that even my income, I didn't have to stay there because I went from two $70 jobs a week to having a six-figure business and running and operating it as a female boss, a CEO. So this isn't a brag. This is just to show you as an example of what can happen when you excuse me, I'm getting my words all mixed up. When you begin to believe something differently about yourself. Because what if what you believe isn't true? Go back to, I was a mistake. Was I? Was I a mistake? Because I don't know, I'm 50, I'm still here, and I think I'm pretty cool, and I'm kind of a vibe for some people, and not everybody likes me, and I'm not for everybody, and that's fine too. But as one of our dear friends of Women Thrive says, you know, who wants to be vanilla? Be you. Just be who you are, and that will help you understand who you really are behind all of those narratives that you have heard told about you. Because they're not true usually. They might have been true to somebody else, and they might still be true to those people, because any one of us can go around, and I always throw myself in as an example, but there are people who think I have had a few people, and I'm so humbled, that say I'm their favorite person ever, and that's the sweetest thing ever. And I love them dearly, but there's some people that just think I'm the most vile and awful human being that ever existed. And I think it's because I trigger their insecurities and disrupt their sense of who they think they are. And that's fine. And you know, wish them well. But, you know, you cannot be everything to everybody. So you have to make yourself happy. You have to make yourself happy, because especially as women, I always say it's like when you get on an airplane, what's the first thing they tell you when the stewardess, or they call them flight attendants now, when they go through the whole thing, that if the masks drop, if there's an emergency, put it on yourself first, then pick your favorite child or your favorite person or somebody. Just help save somebody else at that point. That's what you have to do, because a happy you, a fulfilled you, is going to be such a blessing, such a much happier mother and partner and professional coworker and, you know, person, whatever it is that you do out in the community, whoever you are to everyone else in your life, you're going to be that much better when you have made sure to fulfill your own needs. And I think that starts with what you believe about yourself and how you talk to yourself, because that's such a big part of this. So we talked about the hustle culture and the neuroscience behind belief systems and identity formation. And that is the repetition. Again, your brain hearing something 2 to 7 times, because let me explain that a little further as well, because I feel like this gets a lot of people off the hook as far as what they believe about themselves, because a lot of people go around saying, oh, but you don't know me. But I hear but a lot, you know, when I say, but you're not a mistake, you are good enough, or you can do that. It's not too late. You know, people say, oh, but, because they're the exception, because they can give me all the examples of the instances when they weren't enough, or when they were stupid, or when they were whatever it is. And let me tell you something. That is also your brain's fault. It is not you. You are not deficient. You are not broken. You are not all these things that you think in your head or that you have been told that you are. Take off those "my name is" labels and write a nice one for yourself. Because here's the other aspect of your brain that I talk about all the time is we have this thing in our brain called the reticular activating system. And to break it down for you, its only job is to filter through the roughly 11 million data points that you're exposed to every single day. Everything you see, everything you hear, everything you experience, that's all data that goes into your brain and it goes into your RAS. And out of that 11 million, you want to know how many your brain decides to keep and to file away and store for later use? You're not going to believe me when I tell you this. 24 data points out of 11 million every day. So I think it's really, really important that you understand that, because you know what your brain is picking? Your brain is choosing what's familiar to it. So if you're saying, I'm stupid, I'm stupid, I'm stupid, I'm not enough, it's all your brain is looking for in the world. It doesn't want to have to do the extra work to try to understand other things when it already knows that. It's kind of like when you get home after a long day and you're starving and you know you got to make dinner for yourself, maybe your partner, maybe your kid, whoever, and you're like, oh, you're not going to whip out some new recipe that Martha Stewart put out and start chopping up vegetables and random ingredients and hope it comes out. You're going to do the easy thing. We all have that go-to that's like, I'm starving. I've had a long day. I know how to do this. I can do it on autopilot and it's quick. Same as your brain, same as your reticular activating system. But listen to me when I say it's choosing what's familiar, not what will make you happy, not what will make you think better of yourself, not what's going to help your self-esteem, not what's going to help you propel you to everything that you can achieve and everything that you want in life. It's looking for what's familiar. When I give my talk, I always say it's like a bouncer at a club. Your RAS is the bouncer at the club, the guy that stands out there, looking all tough and rough. And that way he has to choose out of everybody in the line. Well, if there's 11 million people in the line, who's he going to choose? Oh, you're a regular, you can go in. Oh, I know you're my buddy from the gym, you can go in. Oh yeah, you're my cousin. Yeah, I remember you from Christmas last year. Go on in. It's the people that it's familiar with, right? Same as your brain. So what is familiar, though, does not necessarily mean it's true, because out of those 11 million, if 24 are familiar, think about what is lost in the 10,999,976 data points, bits of information every single day that might tell you something different about who you are, what you're capable of, what you can achieve, what possibilities are available to you, what opportunities you can have. 10,999,976. But it's your job, unfortunately, it's your job to go look for those things. Because once you start opening your mind to those possibilities, then the bouncer is going to get the memo. The bouncer will get the updated list as to who we're letting in the club. And it's a very small, exclusive club, so you have to be very discerning about who you let into it. But the beautiful thing is, it's your club. It is your brain, and you get to decide. And I don't know about you, but I lived the first 45 years of my life being depressed and anxious and on one drug after another to try to cope with just existing. And that sucked, honestly, for lack of better words. It sucked. But look, I'm smiling now. And you know what? I didn't have the best day yesterday. Actually, the whole weekend was kind of rough. And I had some cries and some ugly, awful cries. And here's the thing. I'm showing up today and I'm good. Like, I'm honestly good because I know I'm okay and I know I'm worthy and I know my value and what is laying in that future and what awaits me. I know it because I have developed that self trust. And with that self trust came the confidence. And in that confidence came standing taller and still being able to put one foot in front of the other, because I know that there are other truths out there beyond what my brain is choosing to see. And I will not let myself get caught up in what other people have decided and what others dictate to me and about me and how I should live my life. I get to choose that. And I know what I want, just like I know you know what you want. I know you know what you want. And if this isn't it, well, then this is where we create some change, because the change, again, starts with you. So now, what do we need to do to have that self-trust? Because I think this is a big piece that I don't want to end the show without discussing. Self-trust is what is required so that when you start reframing the beliefs you have about yourself and rewiring, the way your brain thinks, having that moment of self-awareness where you stop yourself and say, wait, we're going to think something different, or we're going to do something different in this moment. The self-trust is the key piece, because if you don't trust yourself, you're not going to trust the decision you're making to do that something differently or to speak to yourself in a different way. So how do you develop self-trust? Well, I've developed a course that goes through this in intense detail. But without that course, here's what I can share. Start with small things. And I mean very minute, small details. And just start with one every day. Let's take baby steps. Just decide that, at some point today, and it could be anything, just say at some point today, I'll say it's 12:12 right now, synchronicity, by the way. I love when we see the same numbers on the clock. That's the spiritual girly in me. But let's say I say at 1:00, I am going to shut my phone off, shut off all social media, everything, and go take a 5-minute walk, which I won't do because it's like 100 below zero out there. And I mean, I might die hypothermia. I don't do that. But if it was summertime, I would. But let's say I'm going to go and decide to take a 5-minute walk. I am then going to follow through on that and go take a 5-minute walk and go do the thing. Even if it's in my house, I can walk around my basement or just walk back and forth down the hallway to some, nice music or something. But it's the following through. The point being, make a commitment to yourself and follow through on that. And I know this sounds way too simple and you're like, there's got to be more to it. No, there really isn't. One thing every day. Maybe it's tomorrow, I'm going to make sure I have a nutritious breakfast, and be specific. I have a banana pancake every morning, 2 eggs and a mashed banana. You mix it all up, put it in a pan, comes out looking like a pancake. Don't ask me how, it does. Sugar-free syrup, less than 200 calories, you're good to go, and it's delicious. But that's the thing. I know I trust myself to give my body the nutrition it needs, a good, nutritious, healthy breakfast, because that benefits my physical health, which benefits my mental health, which makes me feel good. And if I feel good, then I can go out and be amazing and do the things. And we want that for you too. But if I don't follow through, if I go and eat the bowl of Captain Crunch instead, and then go get a second bowl of Captain Crunch, I have just gone back on my promise to myself. And then I don't trust myself. And see, that's where we get caught up when we're in life and we're operating so often on what other people expect from us, or what we anticipate is expected of us, or what our roles are supposed to be, what we should be doing. Take that word should out of your vocabulary. Let me just tell you, it's so freeing. But when we want to build that self-trust, is just making a commitment and following through. And when you do that every day, just one little thing every day, follow through, you now have built that little tiny moment of self-trust. And when you do that consistently, then your brain's going to start trusting. You're going to trust yourself with the bigger things, as in, I don't know what to do in this relationship or in this marriage. Well, I have built a relationship with myself and I trust myself to know what's best for me, that I'm going to make the decision that I feel in my heart and in my gut is the right decision. And I'm going to trust that, and I'm going to know it's the right thing. And I'm going to also know that I'm going to be okay no matter what results from that, no matter the consequences. That is self-trust at its finest. But I am promising you one thing every day. I'm actually challenging you, as a matter of fact, one thing every day. And if you are still with me, throw down in the chat one promise you are making to yourself today, right now. I want you to share it with the world, because we're going to hold you accountable. I will, if I see your name in the chat that you have committed to something, I will personally message you tomorrow to make sure that you have fulfilled that commitment to yourself. And like I said, it could be the tiniest. Just make sure it's framed positively. And I always say our main goals, I think, in life can be wrapped up in health, wealth, and happiness. Not necessarily in that order, but it never hurts to put it in whatever order you want. But all of those three things, if they can all align, then what a beautiful life we can have. So start with that self-trust part. Make sure you follow through. And when you do that, the other piece of this after self-trust is giving yourself that authority. Self-authority is so key. And what's most important about this, and I know we all hear this word, especially women, we hear it to exhausting lengths, but it needs to be spoken about constantly. I'm going to say it. Boundaries. Boundaries. Now, I had a call last night. You will see this talked about in a panel that I was in that was recorded last night. But we were talking about boundaries. And I shared with the ladies that the way that I was taught and the way I teach in my Shifting Gears course is that boundaries are sort of like a fenced backyard. So if your backyard and, your house is your life and you have the backyard, you're putting a fence up around all the things that you want to protect, right? Your core values, what you've built for yourself, what you believe about yourself, all the things that comprise what you truly want for yourself and for your future, right? So if something tries to come in the yard, maybe the neighbor has a dog that's always trying to jump the fence or get in the yard, but it's a pit bull and it's vicious. And no offense if you have a pit bull, I'm just using it as an example. You have that fence up to keep it out, right? So anything that threatens what you have built for yourself and threatens your values, threatens your beliefs, that it just doesn't feel comfortable or safe, that's what you keep outside of your fence. That's what you're protecting with that fence. That's all a boundary is. And there are going to be people that aren't going to like it. As I also shared in that panel last night, my husband and I renovate homes, or I should say he does. I just kind of pick things when he needs me to buy appliances and things, but he works very hard. But he recently, at a 2-unit that we own, put up a fence in the backyard. And there were some people that balked at that because they like to cut through it's a shortcut on the way to wherever they're going. Well, guess what? It's not their property. Just like you have a right to protect what is yours and to protect your interests, you get to keep those people out. Nobody gets to walk all over you, literally and figuratively, if you have boundaries. And the problem is when you loosen your boundaries and say, oh, but, no buts. You know your core values, you know what you want. So every time somebody asks you, hey, can you do this for me? And you really don't want to do it, or you don't have time for it, or it's really, really inconvenient, and you say yes, you're disrespecting yourself. There's no other way to say it. And if you continue to disrespect yourself, you're not going to trust yourself and you're going to have no self-authority. So you need to have that authority. Give yourself permission to have that authority to say, I'm going to put up a fence around everything that I want for myself and everything I believe in. And I have the right to do that because this is mine. This is my life, my yard, right? And I'm going to keep everything out that basically doesn't align with with this life. If it supports it, if somebody comes knocking and saying, I want to be your friend, or hey, can I come in? And they're supportive, and it's going to benefit your life or add to your life, or, you know, maybe be a productive endeavor at work. Yeah, you open the gate, welcome them in. But otherwise, other people, you just wave and say hi. Nice to see you. No disrespect, no shame, no nothing. But if it's not for you, it's not for you. And you are the one that gets to make that choice. That is your self-authority. So make sure to give yourself that permission, because when you have self-trust and you have self-authority, you have sustainable power. And I want you to understand, I am saying sustainable, because even with a mindset of scarcity, you might win $1 million in the lottery. Even with a mindset that you are worthless, as I had most of my life, you can still have successes and achievements. We are talking about sustenance, because sustenance is also what's going to build that trust that you need to know that it's there, to know that it's available to you, and honestly, to know that you have the power to make all of that happen, all of it. So this is why this subject was so important to me to start the year with, because if you're like me and you make those resolutions and, you know, you look at your goals, if you're a professional that, you know, wants to set the year on a good course, and you want to set your quarterly goals, your, you know, mid-year goals, all those things, you need to have an idea of where you're going so that you can start to establish the practices and the tools that will get you there. Because if you're just playing it, you know, winging it and playing by chance, then yeah, it might happen, but it might not. But if you want sustainable success, sustainable wealth, sustainable happiness, it all starts within you. Whether it's in your personal or professional life, it all starts with you. Trusting yourself, well, first being honest with yourself, trusting yourself, having authority over your life, and then everything else falls into place. If it aligns, great. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't. But now our last guest, Christine Peine, she does specifically work with people on building sustainable wealth, like the millionaire mindset. And I don't know, if you don't want to be a millionaire, then God love you. But I don't know who doesn't, who couldn't use a few extra bucks these days. So I want you, if you have not already, to go back, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn, check out the last episode of Shifting Gears to hear the conversation with Christine. And if you don't have time to listen or watch it, at least go down into the comments, follow Christine. She is on LinkedIn. She is on Instagram. I follow her on Instagram, and her content is ridiculously amazing and informational. It is helpful, but also sign up for one of her classes. You can also invest in an opportunity to work with her personally, but I have done one of her free classes, and even that was, I mean, it was truly mind-blowing. Like I said, I realized a core belief about money that I hadn't really known before I listened to her on a podcast. And it was that money was such an important thing in my house growing up. It was more important than me. Money, money, money. I was told that my stepfather didn't want to spend money. He shouldn't have to pay for another man's child because I wasn't his. And, you know, so this put this idea of money in my head being bad, and money's the root of all evil. Because in my mind, money is not more important than a child. Money is not more important than another human. But I've had to work over that subconscious block to know that, yeah, actually you can be a humble and decent human being and still have the abundance and the wealth. So just giving that as an example of what happens when you work further with Christine. I definitely recommend you looking into her information at least following her content on the social media platforms. And with that said, I'm also going to go back to the course that I have right now on my website, which is danasdiaz.com. I do have a very affordable little mini course that you can do in a few hours. It's called the Jumpstart But if you like the Jumpstart, which gets all into these subconscious beliefs and getting to the core of things, and it gives you tools and exercises to sort of strategize where you're going and how you're going to get there, how you're going to achieve the life you want, I do have a course that's being launched at the end of February, early March, that's going to be much, much more intensive. And really get to the core root of things. And it's phenomenal for entrepreneurs, but anybody in the area looking for self-development, it's phenomenal for that too. So be sure to go over there, check that out, throw me your email at the website so that you can be on the email list so that when that next course launches, you can be first up for that. But in the meantime, I want you to just go have an amazing day, and do not forget the challenge, which is to commit to doing one thing for yourself, one thing that will benefit your health, wealth, and your happiness. Just has to be a little 5-minute thing that you can do for you today, and then do it, follow through, and then do it every single day. If you put it in the comments, you'll be hearing from me tomorrow. But please have a wonderful day. And do not forget also, one last thing, to go and sign up, register right now for your free ticket to the Women Thrive 2026 Summit, where I and 49 other women, there will be 50 of us speaking over 5 days on everything and anything that you can imagine for your personal and professional development. I will be speaking on Friday, March 20th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Central. I hope to see some familiar faces, but I have a long list of women that I will be watching their talks all week, beginning Monday, March 16th, and ending with me on Friday, March 20th. So please go to Women Thrive, check it out. You can go on my social media as well and find the link to register, and you can upgrade to VIP to get goodies from all of us speakers. But wherever we see you next, I will gladly be looking forward to that. And until then, have a great day, and join us on the second Wednesday of February when we have Sex Fairy Coach Gwen. And yes, the subject is sex, just in time for Valentine's Day. Have a great day, guys.
Thanks for tuning into Shifting Gears, where transformation isn't just talk, it's a conscious shift into the best and happiest version of you. Until next time, enjoy the open road. And if today's episode inspired you, be sure to like, share, and follow so you never miss what's coming next.